case as I am expecting you to write a case report like we've developed over the years. All right? Issues, analysis, alternatives, recommendations, implementation, RACI, I think some people call it. All right? Manager. Mathematics, if you will. If you take a minute per multiple choice, 15 minutes, maybe 20, a little bit of math this time. 15 minutes for each of the short answer questions leaves you approximately 60 to 70 minutes to manage the case. Okay? You see, I don't anticipate you'll have a time constraint. All right? That's what we got. So let's take a look at where we've been this semester. Classic 20 slide, why are we concerned about supply chain management? It's just much more competitive. We got globalization. We got customer demands going up. What's the inventory management objective? Service, costs, and investment in inventory as a very specific cost. We're looking to increase service, our competitive advantage, reducing our cost, whether it's cost to make, or as we've seen over the last two classes, the cost to support, to facilitate getting them with the least amount of inventory. So here we go. Those are the trade-offs, the constraints that we chase in business. For sure, supply chain management being the hub of this conversation, inventory very much, generally speaking, everybody can relate to inventory problems, inventory opportunities. It's very often how things come to play. So, just from real high level, right? What's the importance? How do you want to control it? How much should be ordered? And when should we place the orders? Okay? Aggregate inventory management, I like to bring that one back up in the context of aggregates better than SKU from a forecast perspective. Not necessarily something that's going to come out too dramatically, or more so next semester, but I don't think people really grasp the impacts of things like risk pooling and aggregate inventory management. Essentially, it's the same argument. By reducing the number of items that we're forecasting, we get to aggregate all of the deviations, tie them together into one, rather than, and therefore, standard deviation, the safety stock conversation comes into play. That's where the reduced inventory comes from. By not having as much standard deviation, as big a standard deviation, and that occurs through aggregate. At this point in your career, what I'm saying to you should make sense to you. Yep, I see that. Yep. Because I still don't see that coming back at me when I hear risk pooling, no so what's or what's. Okay, we need to get that into the conversation. Item functions of inventory. All right. Supply and demand, customer demand, finished goods, component availability, all of the just in cases. That's inventory, is just in case. Right? Forecast, supply variation. I use the analogy in the 2201 class. It's like inventory turns as a variation of body mass index, BMI. We all would like to have the lowest possible healthy BMI. To have a zero BMI, you're dead. Comparably, to have zero inventory, you could be on the road to death. All right. So what is that healthy number? I suggest to you, it's not a static number. It's dynamic. Things change. Your environment changes. So what could be healthy last year may not be what's healthy this year. And that to me is the excitement of being in business. Is to keep yourself on top of what's happening and make sure you're the best you can be, like the U.S. Army. You want to be the best you can. Objectives, once again, maximize service, lower cost, minimum inventory investment. Inventory distribution and storage, we're talking about strategic, we got tactical aspects. Bank is a real bit, both, what we just came through, listening to both from a strategic and a tactical. Much of the presentation today was on the tactical side, literally to the management of inventory. I think we do a fair job in the program talking about risk, but as I go home and I reflect on it, we still don't do enough in the context of our cases, for example. As we present our conclusions, we tend to put risk in because Fleming says, I need to have pros and cons and risks. This is also a very exciting aspect, and we'll pay the bills, but what risks? Just literally today, see an article, once again, the West Coast dock strike, they're using that as the banner, say, risk, supply chain management, risk mitigation is not up to par. We need to do more. So I'm bringing it, and it really comes back to inventory, doesn't it? More inventory, less risk. Least risk from the source. Different types, suppliers, raw materials, work in process, finished goods, distribution, warehouse, type of, again, extending the finished goods and ultimately driven by customer demand. We've talked 2201, to overlay the bullwhip here, right, as we step it through, again, conversations that are driven by inventory. At a minimum, another Flemingism for today is I like my checklists. I like to know, I like to have a title for why that inventory is there. Oh, it's raw material. I can relate to it. I can understand work in process or semi-finished, distinguishing that from the raw material, sorry, the finished goods. Talked about this. Inventory classifications is a variation of the functions: anticipation, fluctuation, lot size, transportation or pipeline, hedge inventory, MRO inventory. I heard some of the conversations in the various groups today talking about their facets of it. Why is it there? That's the rhetorical question. It's there because it's satisfying one or more of these. And we got that. So, I'm not going to show you a lot of numbers today. The numbers are your responsibility. EOQ, it turns is an indicator. We talk about input-output, which is representative of our time in capacity management. All right, scheduling, as well as determining efficiency, utilization. What is the rated capacity? What is the required capacity? Those of you that are in 3403 this year, or have taken it in prior years, essentially a revisit of the operations management course. So we got capacity, we talked about, we got maybe not a bad cheat sheet inclusion. And I say that respectfully because you will see some numbers. And if you're like me, why memorize something that you can look at? We need to understand what these are representative of. Cheat sheets cannot help you there. Talked about our planning, our forecasting. I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. Lot sizing, so that one of the 4 questions, how much? Lot for lot, just what it says. I need one, I bring one, I need 133, I get 133. I suspect in the pharmacies, for example, would have both. Some of the really restricted drugs, you get exactly what you ordered. Others you'd have to buy the lot size. All right. Fixed order quantities, mid-max, minimum, maximum. EOQ is where we spent a lot of time discussing the economic order quantity. Once again, I would be comfortable with it. All right. Understand the rationale behind it, what its objective is, how to capture the numbers. All right. Facade. All right, significance of it, in this case, 200s, our cube. I was playing with the 2201 students, I said, is an O cube, does an O cube equal EO cube? And we went on for about 10 minutes playing with that. An EO cube is always an O cube, but an O cube is not always an EO cube. And as silly as that sounds, that should make sense to you. In this case, O cube, 200, 10 per day, if you will, it just comes down to the average inventory is 1/2 our order quantity. It's the beginning of what it is you have in stock, the beginning of the formula, because the remainder of it is plus safety stock. And again, I want you to call me up or send me an email someday and let me know, because I believe all of you are going to run into using this at some point. It will give you the leverage to get a naysayer off the mark and say, by changing this, or I'm going to get this, or this is going to take my inventory from this number to this other number, because I'm able to bring in smaller lot size because of this just-in-time or other initiative that we've got going. It gives you the ability, real life, to quantify it. So, average lot size, inventory, order quantity divided by 2, and number of orders per year, annual demand over order quantity, gives you the number of sawtooth cycles that you're going to see. Where we saw that in the midterm was, that was the vehicle that we used to determine our desired customer service. Where management says, we will accept X, 1, 2, 3, whatever the number is, of occurrences. And if I take you back to this, it's a given. This is your only point in the inventory cycle where you are exposed to a stop, is when the material is scheduled to arrive. And that's because of forecast variation that could exist and supply variation. All right? So those 2 points come together to support the question that we did in the midterm. This is really quickly the EOQ. You've got the setup cost, you've got the carrying cost. That's where we bring the two together. The number here, in this case 200, when we place the order for 200 on an annualized basis, our carrying costs will equal our ordering costs. That's the rationale. If you buy into it, right? There's a lot of assumptions around the EOQ that make it a little bit shaky. My point has always been, in my business life, is as shaky as some of the assumptions end up, it's still a hard number that I can replicate. It's a number that I can put myself behind, recognizing it's as good as it is. The other thing that comes out of here is this total cost, right? It's annual carrying cost plus annual setup or ordering costs, right here. We took that one more step when we did the discount. Recall, we did the EOQ, and then we were enticed by a supplier to say, but if you order a bigger number, I'll give you X% off. All right? So to compare option A, EOQ, and option B, this discounted one, is I had to go through and calculate my total annual carrying cost for each scenario, my total annual ordering cost for each scenario, using those formulas you just looked at. And then the big third variable is the annual demand times the respective purchase cost. All right, so there were 3 variables added together, and we talked about this after the midterm. Almost always in these types of questions, the discounted price is going to win out. All right? The option that versus the EOQ, which opens the door for a managerial question to say, and what other considerations might you incorporate into your decision other than just the pure dollars? Back to the total cost of ownership from the purchasing class, that type of a conversation. So we talked about those. Independent ordering systems, 3 basics. Order point. Let's talk about reorder point. Demand during lead time plus safety stock. All right? So sawtooth revisited. We put the layer of safety stock in there, and that's the point. Average inventory is OQ divided by 2 plus safety stock. Pretty straight up at this point. Why do we have safety stock? Talked about it. Traditional. Variation demand forecast are incorrect. The forecast for customers' consumption and the forecast for how long it's going to be for your supplier to provide you with that product. All right, because of those variables, they're always wrong. I don't have a slide on, but just to revisit. Safety stock equals the service factor times standard deviation. All right? You know how to get this from the tables, the Z tables? If I'm going to expect you to know it, you will be told what the Z table is for 80%, 85%, 90, 90, and so forth. And you know how to calculate standard deviation. You have all the tools. You will have all the tools, either given information, expectation that you can calculate. All right? Okay, dependent, independent demand. We're moving into the MRP world. There will not be a short answer question like you saw on the midterm. All right? But you will be tested on MRP logic in the multiple choice. All right, so it's kind of a sweet and sour. There is no big mark requirement, but the expectation is you understand how to go from gross to net requirements. All right, so dependent demand is calculated. Independent demand is forecasted. All right, that's typically your MPS level in our conversations. Level 0 on the bill of material structure. All right. Levels 1 and lower, generally speaking, are your dependent demand items. All right, bill of material, it's a recipe. Quality, inventory hides problems, we talked about that. We talked about the ROP and justification and the Kanban. This is where we had the conversation where how we can utilize the EOQ to replicate a just-in-time or lean outcome, a lot size of 1, and all that means, by modifying, managing the formula of EOQ, the setup costs in particular. Warehousing lasted 3 or 4 weeks, 4 weeks. We talked about just logistics of warehousing. It's kind of an oxymoron. But receiving, put away, storage, order picking, and shipping. 50% of our costs come from, on the operational side, is from the picking. And why? We kind of focused on that for the balance of the semester. We're looking at the various tools available to us, the requirement for systems, and the growing requirement for systems. And primarily because of the incremental value that we're now looking to warehouses to provide for us. So we got traditional, all right, starting to get into some of the value-added aspects of packaging, configuration. There's a case that you will see next semester where it talks about the HP printers and how the warehouse configures it with user documentation based on the country that the product's going to, putting in the different carriers, trays, sorting equipment, and so forth. They customize it. Postponement coming into play is a big tool that the warehouses are now. Talked about that. We spent class, at least a class, maybe a little longer, on the baseline, the mapping, the profiling of what the activities are. Opening exposing us to the ABCs of customer size, customer order size, multi-item orders, how many receipts we have, how many shipments we're making cyclically, whatever that cycle might be, could be weekly, could be daily, monthly, and enabling us to better understand how we should organize our I see it, spur you slipped it, because I've shared with you. I think warehousing is a factory. By any other name, it's a factory. I'm going to play with this too much in class, but just to give you a sample of the receiving process, the steps that we can go through, and the opportunity to back away and say, why are we doing that? What is that? What exactly do we mean by that step? Is it value added? What would happen if we were to eliminate? With the technology that's available to us, what would happen to it if we were to insert this new and improved technology, RFID, barcode? All right, as we look to get through, if I got it here, this slide here, each one of these representing, I use the analogy of a relay race. We got 11 or 12 baton passes here. Each baton pass is a transaction. Each transaction costs real time, real money. Ergo, more inventory to accommodate the variations that can occur. At the top, where we're drop shipping from supplier right to the customer. Amazon, that type of relationship. Now, I know Amazon's got warehouses, but I'm trying to make a point. All right? So as you step it down, we become, if you will, less efficient, requiring more managerial processes, more managerial time, KPIs, in the instance. Just the system that we play, like not play with, I'm not trying to sound. As we look at this more from a factory management perspective, I think it makes more sense to me at least to understand what do we have to do and why are we doing all of these various steps and how we have to interface with other integrated systems, which most of us would aggregate under ERP. All right, and that's not wrong. Right? You can end up in a company where ERP is synonymous for all of us, but one more Fleming time, where the ability to differentiate, to break it out into this type of flow, informational flow, I think, or I know it helps me clearly step through points as I understand ins and outs, transaction, activities, and so forth. It's the last slide, so it's just some of the value added type of activities. Nothing really brain surgeon like in this list, just as I say, a warehouse is much more than just a place to store. All right, so that's all I know. I think we're on the 16th, is that correct?
Let's see if it, I've been doing so many presentations, I almost forgot. It actually recorded.
Can I not post this? My copy? Yes.
Oh, did it work? I think so, but...
Should be ready for anything.